Hello chess lovers, Suren here, and in this video I want to share with you a very interesting game which was played in round 2 at 2019 FIDE World Cup, with the white pieces playing German chess grandmaster Liviu-Dieter Nisipeanu and his opponent is American chess grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura. But before starting our game, make sure that you are subscribed in order not to miss my future uploads. As I've already mentioned, Nisipeanu was playing with the white pieces and he opened up with knight f3. Nakamura responded with knight f6, d4 e6, c4 d5, knight c3. With a transposition of moves, we reached queen's gambit, declined 3 knights variation, bishop e7 and g3. This is a line which is becoming popular nowadays. White is preparing to fianchetto his kingside bishop like in Catalan opening, though in Catalan white is not hurrying to develop his queenside knight, and later in some cases usually is even putting on d2, but in our game we have a completely different position. The knight is on c3 and the pawn on g3. Meanwhile, Nakamura castled kingside bishop g2 d takes c4, knight e5 and queen d6. A rare continuation by Nakamura. This move employed Vladimir Kramnik against Peter Svidler in 2015 and even managed to win. The idea is to bring the queen on the queen side, from where in some cases it can support the pawn on c4 or the advance of the b pawn. But the downside of that idea is that later the queen on the queen side finds itself out of the game. White castled the king side. In that game, Svidler captured on c4, but in our game we have castling kingside, queen a6 by Nakamura. Already black wants to go for b5, that's why Nisipeanu played a4, knight c6, knight b5. We have a nice target on c7 and knight takes e5. D takes e5. Right now there are two threats, both the knight on f6 is hanging and also the pawn on c7. In here first Nakamura played rook d8, attacked white queen with the idea of if queen c2 then play knight d5. In this case black can even go for an exchange sacrifice, but as a compensation black is getting a nice bishop paired, powerful pawns, and plus the weaknesses of the light squares give black a nice compensation. But in our game, after rook d8, instead of moving away his queen, Nisipeanu made a brilliant decision and he went for a queen sacrifice. E takes f6 is on the board. Rook takes d1, rook takes d1, bishop d6. The bishop is coming to support the pawn on c7 and bishop f4. White wants to remove the defender. e5, which is a mistake. Well, in here it was better to play queen a5. If bishop takes d6, then c takes d6, and in this case black is managing to fight back, but in our game we have e5. The problem with this e5 move is that Nisipeanu could simply munch it with his bishop, but he first captured on d6. And now, instead of capturing on f4, which is the best continuation for black, if knight d8 then queen a5, still black is managing to prolong his resistance. After knight takes d6, Nakamura captured on d6 with the pawn, after which his position goes down very quickly. Here we have bishop takes e5. White is simply using the fact that the 8th rank is vulnerable. The bishop is untouchable. Queen a5. Already black wants to win this bishop, and this time we have rook takes d6. You can't capture because you can get checkmated. That's why Nakamura played bishop g4 and simply bishop c3, queen c7, rook d1. Now you can't even capture on e2 because of this rook d7 move, and if queen c8 then simply bishop takes b7. But let's take a look what white got against the queen. A rook, a bishop and a pawn, right? And also taking into consideration the fact that there is a very nasty back rank weakness, white has more than a compensation. White has a winning position. Right now there are two threats. White can both capture on g7 or on b7. Nakamura played g6 but stepped into bishop takes b7. Again, the bishop is untouchable because of the mating threat. That's why Nakamura played rook f8. All he can do is to think about defense. Meanwhile, we have the exchange of light squared bishops on f3, h5, king g2, rook e8, h4. White is first fixing black's pawn structure on the king side and then is pushing forward his a-pawn, putting it on a dark square, which can both be supported by the dark squared bishop and can also support the bishop. Rook d7, queen a8, rook d6. There are absolutely no weaknesses in white's camp. Rook c8. Meanwhile, all Nakamura can do is to wait for white to finish up the game. Bishop d4. Right now the threat is rook a7. Now if a move like rook e8, if you make another waiting move, then rook a7 followed by rook takes d6. In here Nakamura went for a desperate c3 move, but white simply captured it with his b-pawn. Rook e8, bishop b6 with the threat of rook d8, and finally in here Nakamura resigned. Well, if you play rook c8 with the idea of meeting rook d8 check with king h7, then of course white is not forced to announce that check. White can simply make use of his c-pawn. The c-pawn is marching forward and white is winning easily. That's why after bishop b6, Nakamura resigned. That was a very impressive queen sacrifice by the German chess grandmaster, and I hope that you enjoyed it greatly. Yes, Nakamura played really very poorly in this game, and let's see whether he can fight back in the second game. In the second game he's going to play with the white pieces, and he has all the chances to equalize the game. Well, in the end, let's also solve a chess puzzle where the task is to find the mating line for white. There is a mate in 3, and I will wait for your answer in the comment section. Thanks for watching. In the end, here are more suggestions for you. Feel free to check my previous videos as well. I will see you in my next video. Take care.